Today we'll talk about 20 or more figures that represent death around the world and throughout history. Just a reminder that when I say gods of death, I mean gods who are related to death. I'm explaining this briefly since some may say Hades isn't the god of death but of the dead, Thanatos is the god of death, and so on, etc. There may be over 20 gods I'll mention here, but I'm not sure. Let's begin with Anubis, likely the most famous god here. In Egypt, he's called Ampu or Impu. He was the god who watched over the dead and guarded the underworld. He was usually depicted as a man with the head of a jackal, or as a black jackal, always lying down, similar to a sphinx, and always watching. Initially, he was thought to be Ra's son with Reset, linked to Hathor, but the story later changed significantly. He was linked to Osiris and Nephthys, or possibly Seth and Nephthys as his parents. In other versions, he is also depicted as Bastit's son due to a link with eyes and embalming. His wife is Amputi, his feminine aspect mentioned only in connection with a specific region of Upper Egypt. They would become Kebetch's parents, the goddess of purification. Remember, you could also be purified by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it, because it helps me a lot. If you're interested in learning more about ancient Egypt or the Egyptian methodology, take a look at the pinned comment because I'll leave some links there for you. Also, join the Discord, okay? The most famous myth about his birth. It says that Nephthys, who was Set's wife, disguised herself as Isis to attract her husband's attention. Instead, she became involved with Osiris and got pregnant. Fearing Set's anger, she hid the baby in a swamp. And it was Isis, his aunt, who found him and raised Anubis, protecting him from danger. As he matured, Anubis became lord of funerary rites, soul judgment, mummification, and a guardian. And after Set killed and cut Osiris into pieces, Isis and Nephthys gathered the pieces of the bodies. Anubis offered to restore him to life, creating the first mummy in history. Revived, Osiris became more than a god of agriculture, and he also took on the role of ruler of the dead, inheriting some of Anubis's own functions. From then on, Anubis dedicated himself to guiding souls to the underworld, leading them to the Hall of Judgment. There, he compared the deceased's heart to Mot's feather, symbolizing justice, balance, and truth. Osiris presided over the judgment, Thoth recorded everything, and 42 lesser gods each evaluated a confession of the soul. His cult was spread throughout Egypt, but the main center was in Sinopolis. And there were also shrines and cemeteries of mummified dogs and jackals in Saqqara, as well as the temples of Abiti and Asiuti. As the Greeks and later Romans arrived, Anubis became part of other religious traditions. He merged with Hermes, creating Hermanubis, a deity worshipped in Rome until the 2nd century and admired by alchemists and Renaissance philosophers. Osiris, also called Azar, Izir, or Uzir, was the Egyptian god of death, fertility, renewal, and resurrection. Son of Geb and Nut, he was the brother and husband of Isis, with whom he had Horus. In other stories, he had Anubis with Anput. Unlike many Egyptian gods, Osiris was depicted in a fully human form, with a braided divine beard, a staff, and a flail. His green skin symbolized fertility and renewal, and his white crown, with ostrich feathers, represented Upper Egypt. Osiris was one of Egypt's oldest and most beloved gods. He ruled the underworld and was also linked to harvests and the life cycle. The myths say that he and the 7 were siblings, each married to one of the twin sisters, Isis and Nephthys. And at a certain point, Osiris ended up sleeping with Nephthys, kind of by accident, let's say. And from that, Anubis was born. Consumed by envy and anger, Set ended up killing Osiris. And actually, he did it more than once. The first time, he kind of gave him a sarcophagus as a gift. And when Osiris lay down inside, he trapped him there and ended up throwing him into the Nile. Later, Isis found his body, but Set saw and cut it into pieces, scattering them across Egypt. Only later, with the help of Anubis and Nephthys, she managed to gather the pieces and kind of brought Osiris back to life for a while, long enough for them to conceive Horus. To Egyptians, Osiris was also responsible for land fertility. His green skin resembled the fertile soil left by the Nile's yearly floods that enabled farming. He was seen as a god who taught agriculture and civilized life, abandoning old habits like cannibalism and funerals. It was like the presence of the corn mummies, small clay molds of Osiris filled with seeds, which would sprout, symbolizing his vital force. In the underworld, Osiris presided over the judgment of souls. The deceased's heart was weighed against Ma'at's feather, the goddess of justice and truth. If it was heavier than the feather, still burdened with sin, the soul would then be devoured by Ammit, the devourer of hearts. If lighter, the soul could live forever with Osiris. His cult was especially strong in Abydos, where there was a temple dedicated to him. A yearly festival reenacted his death, burial, and resurrection. Many devotees traveled to the site to be buried there, or at least to perform ceremonies in his honor. Unlike cults limited to royalty, the cult of Osiris welcomed everyone, letting all join the rites and gain blessings once reserved for pharaohs. For many, following Osiris meant ensuring land fertility and the promise of rebirth. Thanatos, the Greek god and personified spirit, was the daemon of nonviolent death, and he is the twin brother of Hypnos, the god of sleep, since violent deaths belonged to the domain of his sisters, who were the Keres. He appears in two more myths. In one, he was sent to take Alceste to the underworld, but was driven away after fighting Heracles, or Hercules. In the second, he was captured by the trickster Sisyphus, who trapped him in a sack to escape death. In Greek art, Thanatos appeared as either a winged bearded man or a beardless youth. He often appeared with his brother Hypnos, carrying Sarpedon's body in a scene from the Iliad. In Roman art, he appeared as a young man holding a torch pointed downward, and a wreath or a butterfly, symbols of the souls of the dead. In Hesiod, he is the son of Night and brother of Care, and also of Sleep, living in the underworld. In Euripides' play The Basket, he appears as a stern priest of Hades, dressed in a dark tunic and wielding a sword, a ritual where he cuts a dying person's hair and delivers it to the underworld. Over time, poets began to portray Tartanos as a sad or frightening figure, but the best Greek artists preferred to soften his image. A depiction of the chest of Kypselos shows Night with two boys, one black and one white. In Sparta, there were two statues of Thanatos and Hypnos, usually as sleeping youths or spirits with torches turned downward. Records show sacrifices to Thanatos, but no temples dedicated to him. The name Pion or Pion, which means the one who heals, was used to refer to both Apollo and Thanatos, seen as liberators from the evils and sufferings of life. Their link to the verb paion also suggests both serve as destroyers. Hades in Greek mythology is the god of the dead and ruler of the underworld. Although his name is often used to refer to the underworld itself, in fact, it is the name of the god himself. The place was called the land, or house of Hades. He was the son of Kronos, and with the king, he was the brother of Zeus, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, and Poseidon. Unlike other gods, he did not live on Olympus, but in the underworld realm. He was typically shown as a bearded man holding a scepter, two-pronged spear, libation vessel, or cornucopia, symbolizing Earth's mineral and vegetal wealth. Sometimes he appeared seated on an ebony throne and driving a chariot pulled by black horses, often accompanied by Persephone, who was his wife. And he also had his helmet, which made him invisible. It was also used by Athena and Perseus on some occasions. Hades got his domain following the Titanomachi, the war between gods and titans. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades divided the world after winning. Zeus took the sky, and Earth, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld. His realm was split into two regions, Tartarus of eternal darkness for the punished, and the Elysian fields for the souls of the righteous. Souls crossed the river Styx to the realm with Charon, the ferryman's help. They also had to get past Cerberus, the three-headed dog with a serpent's tail. 4 other rivers also crossed the underworld: the Acheron, the Lethe, the Cocytus, and the Phlegethon. Hades left his domain only twice, to abduct Persephone and to heal from a wound by Heracles. He oversaw judging the dead, but torture was the Furies' job, not his. The souls were judged by 3 judges: Minos, who had the deciding vote, Iacchus, who judged the European souls, and Rhadamanthus, who judged the Asian souls. Hades rarely interfered in decisions, only when necessary. Though strict, Hades wasn't considered unjust. Even so, his name was rarely spoken because he caused a certain fear in people. They used other names such as Clymeno the Illustrious or Eubulu, who gives good advice. He had few direct worshippers and no temples dedicated to him. Persephone was queen of the underworld and Hades' wife. She was also the goddess of spring growth. She was worshipped with her mother Demeter in the Eleusinian mysteries, an agricultural cult promising initiates a blessed afterlife. She was known as Kor, or the maiden, as the underworld goddess in spring. One day, while playing in a flowered meadow with her nymph companions, Kor was abducted by Hades and taken to the underworld to become his wife. Demeter, of course, was desperate and set out in search of her daughter, accompanied by the goddess Hecate, who carried torches. When she discovered that Zeus had conspired in the abduction, Demeter became enraged and refused to allow the earth to bear fruit. Until Persephone was returned, Zeus grew worried and yielded to Demeter's pressure. But Persephone had tasted the food of the underworld, some pomegranate seeds, and because of that, she was condemned to spend part of the year with Hades. Her spring return signaled the fields blooming and grains growing. On the other hand, her return to the underworld brought about winter, the decline of the plants, and a pause in the agricultural cycle. In many myths, Persephone is simply the underworld queen, receiving heroes like Heracles and Orpheus. She is usually depicted as a young goddess, holding sheaves of wheat and a lit torch. Sometimes she is seen alongside Demeter and the hero Triptolemus, the master of agriculture, and other times she appears on the throne next to Hades. Erawan is a Celtic god of the dead, also known as a master hunter and skilled warrior. His name has a somewhat uncertain origin. Some scholars think it comes from Aaron, Moses' brother, while others trace it to Lloyd Alexander's The Chronicles of Prydain. Erawan could be an unseen villain due to his link to Cassia and his ties to the Gaulish god Cernunnos. Erawan, a member of the Tuatha De Danann, worshipped by the Celts, has superhuman powers and rules over vengeance, terror, war, and spiritual communication. He could possess people and create magic matter. Aeon, the Celtic underworld, was described as a paradise offering everything you could imagine or desire. This god rode a pale horse with hunting dogs that had red ears, chasing souls until they surrendered. He's actually featured in my video covering all of Celtic mythology in order linked in the card and description. His greatest enemy was Rafgan, who could only be killed with a single blow delivered by a mortal. To defeat him, On relied on Puyo, prince of Dyfed. The two met during a hunt when Puyo drove away the red-eared hounds of Erawan, who had brought down a deer. Not knowing they were the hounds of that god, the god appeared and scolded him. After talking, they agreed that Puyo would replace Erawan as king and kill Rafgan for him. The god also managed Puyo's kingdom, and together they cared for both kingdoms well. And Puyo even refused to sleep with Erawan's wife. On the final day, Puyo defeated Rafgan with one blow, as agreed, and they met where the agreement started to undo the exchange. After that, they became close friends. Erawan also fought with Bran in the Battle of the Trees, a conflict that allegedly started when Amadam, the god of agriculture, stole a dog, bird, and goat from him. Amatam was aided by his brother, the wizard Gwydion, who transformed the trees into an army to confront Erawan and his forces. From another world, in Norse mythology, Hel, or Hela, is the goddess of death who rules Helheim, the underworld. She is the daughter of Loki and Angerboda, and sister to Fenrir and the serpent Omungander. Her appearance is quite different, let's put it that way, right? She is half alive and half dead. Soon after her birth, Odin took her to the underworld in Niflheim, on the shores of Nastradal. She became queen there. Hel determines the fate of those who died without glory, such as from illness or old age. Not all the dead went to her. In fact, those who died in battle, half went to Falk and the other half to Odin. Her palace was called Elvidinr, which translated would be misery, and it is guarded by the dog Garmr. Hel receives everyone in Helheim and judges the fate of each soul. The wicked were sent to a freezing and torturous death, considered worse than the lake of fire and some others. She carefully guided those who did not seek war, children, the elderly, and women who died in childbirth through the cycle of reincarnation. Morrigan, also called Morrigan Morrigu or Morugan, is the Celtic goddess of battle, conflict, death, and fertility. Her name means Great Queen or Phantom Queen. She can appear as a single goddess or as a triple goddess, the others being Badibi and Masha, or, in some versions, Nemayim. She is often represented as a crow, and Morrigan was one of the Tuatha De Danann, who decided to defeat the Firbolg and the Fomorians in the two battles of Moytura. She is linked to nature's forces and Earth's sacred power. Morrigan embodies both life and death. She was tall, with long hair, almost translucent white skin, and piercing black eyes. She combines beauty and strength. She was a relentless warrior, skilled with any weapon, and an invincible, experienced hunter in combat. In Irish legends, Morrigan is linked to war, death, and love. She appeared before battles as a goddess of destiny, her presence or song signaling the arrival of death. This made the warriors fight without fear, because for the Celts, death was just the beginning of a new cycle. In battles, Morrigan led troops with a scream as powerful as 10,000 men. Wielding two silver spears that could wipe out rows of enemies, her abilities surpassed mere physical strength. She could conjure mist to block foes, transform into a crow, wolf, or old woman, and expertly used herbs for healing and poison. Odin, also known as Rodan, is the father of all, the chief god of Norse mythology, and leader of the Aesir. His name means fury or frenzy, showing the intense inspiration that drives warriors and poets. He is the god of wisdom, war, and death. Besides being linked to magic, poetry, prophecy, victory, and hunting, he was especially revered by the upper classes. From Valhalla in Asgard, Odin rules the gods and watches the 9 worlds from his throne. Gjalf calls him the god of war. He sends Valkyries to bring fallen heroes to join his feast until Ragnarok. At the end of times, he will lead the gods and warriors against the forces of chaos, but he is destined to die, devoured by the wolf Fenrir, who will be killed by Vidar. His son Odin is depicted as an old man with one eye, wearing a cloak and wide-brimmed hat. He is accompanied by the wolves Gary Freak, who devour the fallen, and by the ravens Ruin and Monin, who travel the world and return bringing news. Many times, Sleipnir, an 8-legged horse, could swiftly cross skies and sea. His weapon is the spear Gangnir, forged by the dwarves and accurate in any attack. Yama, meaning twin in Sanskrit, is the Hindu god of death. Also a Japanese name, he is known as Edamayo or Yan. He's often depicted as a blue man on a large buffalo, holding a mace and lasso. In other depictions, he might be green, dressed in red, and wearing a crown. Yama also has 2 dogs, Charvara and Syama, who guard a path to the underworld, descendants of the dogs that protect the cattle herds of the god Indra. His appearance shifts greatly based on who he meets. To the wicked, he appears as a completely bizarre creature with thin lips and huge legs. In short, he's very strange. To good people, he seems cuter. He closely resembles Vishnu. He is the son of the gods Surya and Sanjana, daughter of the divine craftsman Shivakarma. Yama, Yami's twin, was the first mortal to die and discover the underworld path, according to the Vedas. As a result, he gained control of the realm of the dead, becoming Lord of Death and linked to Shiva's destructive side. Yama rules Naraka, the Hindu underworld. This realm is viewed as a place of torment, where souls are punished according to their sins. Among the punishments, there were some very pleasant things, such as, for example, baths in boiling oil and incessant lashings with thorny plants. Mictlantecutli, the Aztec god of death, ruled Mictlan, the underworld, with his wife. He was worshipped across Mesoamerica. The couple lived in a windowless home, watching over the souls of the dead. He was likely among the first Aztec gods, and some scholars link him to Tezcatlipoca in the Aztec calendar. Mictlantecutli protected Esquintre, the day of the dog, and provided souls for those born then. He was the 5th night lord and the 6th or 11th day lord. He was equivalent to the Mayan god Aputa, the Apoteca god Kedo, and the Taramascan god of Ruim. He was closely associated with owls, spiders, and bats. He was especially worshipped in the Aztec month of Titr, when, in the temple of Tlalchico, his impersonator was sacrificed and incense was burned in his honor. In art, he often appears as a blood-stained skeleton or a man with a skull featuring sharp teeth, and with things on his ears, an owl feather cloak, and a necklace made with oils. He sometimes wears clothes with a conical bark paper hat and may have an owl on his arm. Bicteca Ciruatri, meaning Lady of the Dead, is the Aztec goddess of death. She's also with the god I mentioned, Mictlantecuhtli. She was usually depicted as a woman with a skull-painted face, wearing a skirt made of serpents, and with sagging breasts exposed. Her main function was to watch over the bones of the dead. According to Aztec mythology, the bones of the dead from a world before ours were used by the gods to create the first human beings of this world. Therefore, it's possible the bones of the dead might one day be needed to create people in a world after ours, which explains the need for them to be carefully guarded. Mictlantecuhtli also managed the Festival of the Dead, which is now known as the Day of the Dead. That's why her worship is often confused with the Mexican cults of Santa Muerte. Santa Muerte, also called Lord of Good Death or Lord of Death, is a saint venerated in Paraguay and northeast Argentina, especially in Corrientes, Misiones, Chaco, and Formosa, especially in Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul in southern Brazil. Although similar, this is not the same Santa Muerte I mentioned earlier. Their rituals have similar powers, but they are different figures. This saint's origin dates to the 16th century Jesuit missions. Legend says he was a Franciscan or Jesuit monk who healed many illnesses, especially leprosy. He acted independently of the church, and his rising popularity troubled his superiors. They warned him several times to stop, but since he didn't listen, he was arrested. Because of that, he stayed fasting and standing in the cell and was found dead just like that. Already skeletal, he wore a robe and used a staff to walk. Sam Lamort is often depicted as a standing human skeleton, though portrayals vary, with simple and minimalist features. He often carries a scythe, sometimes with blood on the tip. In some versions, he has no scythe or sits on a coffin. Yan Wan, or King Yan, is the deity who rules Ju, the underworld in Chinese and Buddhist mythology. He oversees the 10 courts of the afterlife and judges souls' fates. His origin comes from the Hindu god Yamaraja, or Yama, who arrived in China with Buddhism during the Han Dynasty. One of his names is Yan Lu Wan, a transcription of Yamaraja in Sanskrit. Over time, Yan Wan's myth blended with local beliefs through religious syncretism. Thus, he appeared in nearly all Buddhist cultures, becoming significant in Tibet, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. To remain Lord of the Dead in China, he changed his appearance to fit Chinese culture. Yan Wan is shown as a menacing figure with bulging eyes, dark red skin, a stern look, and a long black beard. He usually wears traditional Chinese robes and a hat marked with the character for king on the front. Baron Samedi is a Loa, a spirit or god in this religion, and is the Loa of the dead. Baron Samedi's name means Saturday in French, similar to other versions like Baron Cimetière or Baron de la Croix, though there may be other origins for the term. He's often described as a man in a white hat, black suit, dark sunglasses, and cotton in his nostrils, and he looks like a corpse dressed in Haitian funeral clothes. His face looks like a white skull and his voice is nasal. Although he is a deity, he is often seen negatively or as amoral, especially by those who are unfamiliar with voodoo. He leads the Gedi family of Loas, serving as their aspect and possibly spiritual father. He is married to the powerful Loa Mama Bridget, known for pursuing mortal women. Even for believers, Baron Samir is a dangerous spirit but can be a strong guardian, depending on your devotion. That's why he is sometimes called a demon or a god. Baron Samit spends most of his time in the spiritual realm of voodoo and is known for his outrageous behavior, cursing and making dirty jokes with other spirits. When someone dies, he digs that person's grave and receives their soul after the burial, guiding them to the underworld. He is just like in Sumerian or Mesopotamian mythology and is the goddess of death and the queen of Irkala, the land of the dead or underworld. She's sometimes called Irkala, much like how Hades refers to both the underworld and its ruler in Greek mythology. Shikigu is the daughter of Nemu, god of the primordial sea, an Anu, god of the sky, and twin sister of Enki, god of the waters. Shortly after her birth, Shikigu was taken by the dragon Kura to the underworld, and she became its ruler. She also claims to be Inanna's older sister, the god of love, war, and fertility. She is best known from the myth of Inanna's descent into the underworld, where she traps Inanna inside. Nergal, the god of war and plague, was sent by the other gods to the underworld with a message for Eri Shikigu, its queen. The character he saw requested to return to the underworld. The god Anu warned him not to eat or drink anything there and not to get close to Eri Shikigu. However, the goddess seduced him, and they stayed together for 7 days. Nergal returned to the heavens, leaving Shikigu devastated and threatening to resurrect the dead to outnumber the living. If Nergal didn't return there, the gods agreed and sent Nergal back, where he married Erishikigo. In another version, Erishikigo sent Nantar to meet Anu and the gods, but Nergal offended him by failing to show reverence for the queen. The gods feared Erishikigo's response, but Nergal dismissed their warnings, claiming he owed no respect to a goddess he hadn't met. Enki later warned him about Erishikigo's power and the danger he faced, so he followed Enki's advice. Nergal visited the underworld to apologize, but fell for Erishikigo's unexpected beauty. He had previously thought she was a hideous old woman. Urupari, also known as Urupari, is the Sateri Mawe god of evil, darkness, the underworld, and the moon. Along with Tupana, the god of good, he belongs to the supreme Monia, cosmic forces of creation. He is extremely powerful, serving as the chief and creator of all demons and evil beings on earth. To take the form of a Matin ghost from this mythology, or to possess a Pingwari, a creature that is his main ally. He can also shapeshift, like when he became a serpent to kill a boy. He represents night, the unseen and mystery, besides having power over death and also bringing allies back to life, a power that may be linked to Urutai, his right-hand man. His priests are the Paje Pochi, and despite his countless powers, Urupari speaks in some plots and disguises. He likes humans except the Mawes, who symbolize unity and prosperity. They follow Tupana and have killed many of his followers. Still, he stays loyal, avenging and resurrecting the fallen. In some versions, he created the moon, called Wati, which is just his symbol. In others, he is the moon itself. He can create life, which makes him resent females. For the Moe, Tupana and Urupari are the guardians and givers of good and evil in the universe. Tise was born human, beautiful, and skilled in magic. From girlhood, she practiced and perfected her supernatural abilities, but not for good. Her magic caused envy and cruelty. Learning of her power, Urupari, the spirit of evil, offered a pact. Tisi would grant him powers and marry him, becoming a goddess with powers equal to Tupa's children. She agreed and became the goddess of darkness and the underworld, Tisi. She became known among the deities for spreading evil and envy in humans, and for manipulating potions and poisons. Shunned by the goddesses, Yasi and Arasi turned against them, and Urupari granted her control over death. She began her reign in Tedamaraman, the underworld. Envy and discord are sent to the living, causing conflict. Ultimately, the faithful are welcomed at the underworld's gates to live by her side forever. Thanks to Arthur dos Maitos Brazil for sharing his information. Azrael is known as the Archangel of Death in various extra-biblical traditions, such as Islam and Sikhism, an angel who guides souls, known as Azrael or Israel. In the Quran, however, he is referred to only as Malak al-Ma'ut, the angel of death. His name means the one who helps in God and can also appear as Israel, Azrael, or Azrael. Although some associate his name with the priest Ezra, the figure of Azrael is much older. In Islamic tradition, he is among Allah's 4 highest angels, serving solely at his will. At the beginning of Christian history, it was said that he ascended to heaven without experiencing death. He was even called the angel of the law by the heretic Marcion. In Jewish mysticism, his image varies widely. He can be seen as the personification of evil, but not necessarily evil itself, in this case, not evil in essence. In other traditions, he is described as the inhabitant of the third heaven, where he fulfills his role of separating the soul from the body at the moment of death. Jihosong Seja is the Korean psychopomp and is a figure from Korean mythology, responsible for guiding souls, both good and bad, from the world of the living to the underworld. Unlike the singular figure of death in the West, Jiosun forms an entire class of spiritual bureaucratic messengers who work under the orders of King Iomina, the sovereign of the underworld, who is very similar to Yama from Hinduism and Yin from Chinese mythology. In this case, Iomina judges the souls and decides their fate, while the Reapers carry out his orders with absolute dedication. Traditionally, Johnson is described as a tall and imposing figure wearing a black robe suited to his funerary role and a wide-brimmed hat called a gat. In modern portrayals influenced by media, he might wear a black suit and fedora, with his face in shadow to enhance his mystery. In folklore, he typically has pale skin, sunken eyes, and a serious look, highlighting his somber presence. And, despite being portrayed as a solitary figure, his role is essential as he serves as the bridge between life and death. He is not a deity, he is just a messenger who works for them. If you've watched the video up to this point, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share the video as well. I'll see you next time.